Hello everybody, it's me, Blackstar-chan X3 aka Marshall. Gotta address the elephant in the room. Romeo and Juliet is a dumb story, and somehow there's a dumb manga about it. You cannot fathom how flabbergasted I was finding this at the library. I'm not familiar with the story of Romeo and Juliet outside of children's movies adapting this very grim story about two idiots game-overing themselves over a childish fling they probably would have gotten over in like a week. Also, Romeo in the OG story was like 18 and Juliet's 14. Ew! Nasty. Yeah, blah blah blah. Stuff everyone's mentioned before. Old story is old and has gross shit in it, who's surprised? And this manga isn't exactly drawing me in much with the nonsensical drawn-out dialogue and creepy sexism and possible plans of SA and murder. Just thrown in there for no reason. I don't like either of these two. Hey, Light Yagami. I got one for the Death Note. His name's Samson, apparently. So, for the story, two families, the Machkis and the Capulets, are just fighting, for no real reason, in the middle of the street. As you do, I guess. Provoked by thumb biting. So far, the prince, who I've seen in an antagonistic role before, so I don't know if he's meant to be a voice of reason, but hey, I sure do relate to him right now. He seems to make the most sense right now, being like, "You dumb stop fighting in the street." Which, if I had to watch this from my window every morning, I'd also get fed up with this. I'm fed up with it already. After the fight, we see Romeo. He wasn't really involved with it, which is whatever. And for some reason, our title character looks like Sebastian Michaelis and Kirito decided to have a really weird, fucked up love child. It's a thing, I guess. I will say, regardless of the story, the costume design is pretty fun to look at. The characters themselves can sometimes feel like a how-to-draw manga book in uncanniness. The Macbeth manga looks way better from a quick flip-through, and no, I'm not joking, that also exists. Romeo is like upset, I think. It's really hard to tell, because I can't understand a word they're saying. Trying to translate these literal poems they speak into actual understandable English in my brain is just not freaking working. So if my interpretation of what they're saying is off, I'm sorry. I speak English, not Shakespearean. Seriously, who are the people trying to impress with keeping up with the old English? Like, who? Who is gonna be, like, impressed and engaged with this? Apparently teachers and librarians maybe care about the people who actually have to read this shit. I feel like a more loose translation would have been more engaging and exciting, you know, as someone who's reading this in 2024. This particular hardback was published in 2018, and I know there's literal translations floating around since before then. Since this is a manga, it kinda reminds me of the debate on subtitles and English translations. Attack on Titan, for example, takes a lot of liberties in making the English dub hit a lot harder than the subtitles. So, like, I'm all for having translators having a bit of fun and just making the experience better. Like, if you like the old English, cool. I think you're lying, but I just do not care for the style of speak. It's just obnoxious and feels like a wall of entry into understanding what the heck is going on. According to my girlfriend, in this scene, Romeo was actually whining about his ex, which apparently didn't even have a character, so I don't even think they name-dropped her. I did not get that at all. I just thought he was being obnoxious about loving girls he couldn't get, or something. This is gonna be a lot of the review, oh god. He could have just said, "Oh, my GF dumped me," and his cousin could have been like, "Aw," and that would have had, like, a way clearer and better impact to the audience about what the hell was going on than literally anything he said. And I'm not even fucking with you about that. So there's, like, a party going on, and Romeo hears about it. And there's a creepy scene where a nurse and Juliet's mother, Miss Capulet, just keep repeating the fact she's 14 and needs to get married. Juliet needs an adult, and not one who will sell her to a man twice her age, probably for status. Girl's just a baby. Her mom's saying that she was a mom before Juliet has even been married is just like, that shit makes me sick. And all the talk about God and his weird being why this 14-year-old girl needs to get married is a good time to remind you, you know, the kind of people nowadays who block bills trying to ban child marriage in America, it's like legal in a lot of states. It's all for quote-unquote religious freedom. You wanna know what I was doing at 14? Reading and writing stupid fan fictions as a kid. So during this party, Romeo and his pal, I think, Mercutio? I'm probably saying that wrong, but oh well. This dude. And that more things of nothing of substance really happen. And okay, as I was writing this script, I was reading it, and I got really fed up with the flowery language and the visuals just not adding anything to the plot. This feels like it could have been like a one-shot if they removed all the senseless fluff. Tens upon tens of pages are just wasted saying like absolutely nothing effectively and not adding anything to the plot or characters. Like, something they could say in like one sentence is just dragged out for like 10 whole pages. It happened when like Romeo was going on his long dialogue about women, and it like happens here about dreams, and it's just like, it just feels like fake deepness, if that makes sense. The best way I can like describe this experience is like reading a Japanese book, and like I am not fully like fledged in Japanese, so like when I read stuff I only understand like a few words, and like I rely on the expressions and stuff a lot, especially for manga, and so it just feels like that. Except this is in English. I can read the words, but just none of it does anything or registers as like actual meaningful things. It gets really frustrating. Even the visuals like don't add much outside of just looking decently aesthetically pleasing. Romeo shouting "thou talkest of nothing" might be the most relatable line if he also didn't "thou talkest of nothing." Pot calling the kettle black, pal. Because I love comparing things to the Four Swords manga, because we can't leave out the Four Swords manga from a single video. So far, like what we've done in that book, page-wise, compared to this one, we introduced Link. Zelda and the maidens got kidnapped. Link got split into 4 and fought the rock body monster. They met Shadow Link at the castle, and now they went into a village, and they're just shy of fighting the eyeball rock monster that Shadow Link sent to like mess with them in the dark world. And you might be like, Black Star, that's just a dumb comparison. Well, I for one like media that doesn't lollygag around doing nothing, pretending to be deep, and I prefer shit that has substance. One's using its very, very short runtime well and telling an engaging story, and the other, like, tries to be so faithful to, like, where it just ends up boring and dull. Like, who would read this over the manuscript of the play at this point? Like, I'm being genuine. Like, that's a good question in general. Who is this made for? An adaptation in manga form would be fun. Like, an adaptation with adaptational, like, liberties to make things fun and interesting and engaging. But like this, like, who was this made for? I joked about it before, but like, oh my god. So like, I watched people review like Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss, which is like a stupid animated version of Romeo and Juliet. But like, that is even more fun. Like me watching reviews of other people complain about it. And not even just because people complained about it, but because like, the visuals are stupid and fun, but like the dialogue is like not a slog to listen to, and like it was made by one guy, so like the vibe is just different from this, where it feels patronizing, like it's sitting there being like, this is the version that teachers will like, and it's like, yeah, well maybe your teacher sucks if they like this. Back in Manga Land, our main characters like haven't even met yet. In 83 out of 394 pages. Romeo spots her, like, finally, and Lord Capulet spots him, and is like, Tybalt, don't kill him, for some reason that I can't decipher. And so Romeo and Juliet are, like, smooching and making out, and he's like, maybe I'd find this romantic if, like, it just didn't come off as really creepy that Romeo's creeping on this 14-year-old girl. Ew. And I don't know if this dialogue was meant to be romantic, or if it's meant to be, like, taking the piss, because it's, like, a thing where people are like, this whole book is, like, a taking the piss out of stuff, and, like, you just don't get it. Like, this feels like it's played very straight, and I don't know if that's, like, the book doing it wrong, or if the source material is that people just lie about it. But, yeah, this isn't very romantic to me, personally, no matter how many anime sparkles you try to add onto it. And the party ends, and it's revealed to Juliet that it's like, oh no, that was Romeo. Oh my god. And he's a Montague. My family enemy, the horror. And that was me slogging through Act 1. To be honest with you, if this wasn't for a video, I would stop here. This is horrible. I hate it. I'm recording this before I read the rest of it. Please save me. Hey, so editing blocks are here. I fixed my model and it is a little bit better maybe. Back into the story. So Romeo and Juliet have a weird little talk on her balcony, and I think, honestly, the best part was, like, her little monologue before about names and whether or not they have meanings. That's a sweet sentiment. Romeo goes out to meet with Friar Lawrence, who's like a holy man, I guess, and he finally name drops his ex, whose name's like Rosaline, apparently. Lawrence is like, how dare you fall in love with another woman so fast? And I think that's what he says anyway. And Romeo is like, can you marry me and Juliet, this random 14-year-old girl I met like a day ago? And then Friar's like, fine. And it's like, that's a bit fast, huh, kiddos? This scene stands out like a lot for having more personality in the art style, I think. Like, I'm pretty sure the artist was having more fun with this scene than the others. Romeo and the nurse conspire to get him to be able to meet with Juliet. The most entertaining parts of this book tend to be when the artist just, like, goes kind of batshit. Or when Romeo's with his gay cousin. I think that's his cousin. The nurse tells Juliet Romeo will marry her, and then they have the marriage at the church. And no, I'm not really skipping any important things. The story just kind of seems to have a pacing problem. Like, everything I just said took way longer than it would have, like, any right to. We've plowed through many chapters, and I've only had, like, a sentence of relevant information for, like, each of them for you. Tybalt decides to be a menace in the streets for no real reason. And shanks Mercutio for no real reason. No, he wasn't my favorite. In the arms of an angel. In a fit of rage, Romeo kills Tybalt, which, okay. Apparently that was a dumb idea, because the prince is mega mad, and he's like, Romeo, you're exiled for your foolishness. Okay, fair, he killed someone. These dunces were playing sword fights in the streets constantly, basically, and didn't expect someone to die from this? Oh, like, okay, dumbasses. The nurse tells Juliet the nonsense going on, and apparently Tybalt was her cousin. Alright. This book has, like, a tendency to only tell important information, like, way after the fact of when it would be important, and then they just bring it up constantly after that. Romeo's throwing a huge bitch fit tantrum because he got banished, and now he's just hanging out at the church with Lawrence, and Lawrence is like, dude, you could have been executed. This is better. But Romeo, like, ain't having it, and then the nurse comes in, and she's like, I was looking for you, and Romeo's like, I think I want to die. No. The nurse comes in looking for Romeo because everyone needs to do the plot for him, and Romeo's response might be the funniest thing to me, just because of the wording. Where is she? And how doth she? And what says my concealed lady to our cancelled love? Your love's been cancelled. I will say, this is probably the most interesting conflict so far. Even if it comes from, like, a really stupid place of a nonsensical fight, and, like, I think that's, like, the point of the story, but, like, ugh. Romeo taking the life of Juliet's cousin is super tragic, and the act affecting both in a messed up way. Romeo feeling regret that he killed her kin, I think it's regret. It's either regret that he killed him, or regret that how it affected him later, like, in the sense of, like, oh no, I punched a wall. I don't regret punching the wall because it's a bad thing. I regretted punching it because now my hand hurts. I don't know if it's that kind of regret, or like, oh no, I killed her cousin. It could be either, but the dialogue is so nonsensical that it's impossible for me to tell. And, you know, Juliet's conflicted because she's like, oh no, my husband is a murderer and he murdered one of my family members. That's kind of messed up. Hey, that's a good concept right there. If only I was emotionally attached to any of these people, it'd hit a lot harder. Instead, Mr. Grudge Without a Point did a stupid thing and died for it, and Mr. Yaps a lot was weirdly touchy with Romeo, but the dust. And Mr. Whiny Pants cries while everyone else does the plot for him. And Juliet's just kind of like a concept, more of a character at this point. At least we're halfway done with this. So Romeo tries to, like, harm himself and gets stopped, and the Capulets start talking about marrying Juliet to this random dude. Ew. Perfect timing right after her cousin bit the dust. Like, this isn't insensitive at all. Hey, I know your cousin just died, but you want to get married? The next scene chapter starts with Romeo in Juliet's bed. Ew. Juliet has a confrontation with her family about not wanting to marry this rando. I in post hi after reading. His name's Paris, apparently. I called him rando the entire script. And she was like, no, I want to marry Juliet. And they, like, low-key disown her? Kind of? Or they just yell at her? I'm really not sure what the hell's going on here. She also confides in Lawrence about her issues, and she's like, also threatens to end herself in Minecraft. And poor Lawrence is like, God, this dude has to deal with so much nonsense and these people being idiots. Instead of letting her, like, off herself, he's like, hey, what if you take this death potion I have, just randomly? I'm sure this won't cause any issues at all. And then I gotta ask Lawrence, my guy, why do you have that? Juliet apologized to her family, in a fake way, and, like, hurries to her room to fake her own death. Not before having a concerning monologue about how this could really backfire on her, like, how she, like, this could have been a poison that Lawrence gave her, or, like, how she could wake up in her tomb and starve and suffocate to death, like Jesus. Like, Jesus, girl, yeah, a lot could go wrong. Oh, God, and she's, like, in such a shitty situation, I feel for her, man. Her family ends up finding her playing dead, and they're all like, oh no, which is interrupted by a really stupid comedic scene with the band that was meant to play for her wedding. Like, this felt really bad. The comedy's honestly really bad, except for, like, the chibi moments. And this random kid breaks the news to Romeo, who, like, later in the story seems to be, like, his accomplice in shit. I don't know. Like I said, these nobody is properly introduced until, like, 30 pages after when it would be relevant. And he's like,
no, it can't be. No.
Oh no, not Juliet. And then he gets some poison and then breaks into her tomb like a crazy person and proceeds to kill the guy she was meant to marry in, like, cold blood. And then Lawrence shows up just in time for our girl to wake up, and she's like, oh no, Romeo's dead. And she also dies. And then everyone shows up to the crime scene like a game of Clue to figure out what the heck just happened. And the Capulets and the Montagues look at each other and they're like, damn, maybe this was pointless. And then it ends. Honestly, as someone who has, like, no attachment to the story or the world of Romeo and Juliet, this was awful. However, I think it's technically a perfect adaptation. The effort is clearly there. I mean, like, the back of the book has a lot of anecdotes from the creators and the team behind this manga, and the passion is really there. They visited the real life of Verona to get inspiration, tried to adapt certain parts of the play better into the manga, like having Romeo not recognize random dude, who, again, his name was Paris, by shrouding him in shadows for the artwork. And, like, that's the kind of thing you can do in the 2D medium. You have, like, complete control over the story, so, like, anything that, like, wouldn't make as much sense in a play would make, like, way more sense, because apparently him not recognizing him is, like, a part of it, but again, the dialogue's so freaking hard to understand. And as stated, they also state, like, visual cues and metaphors are a thing, and then they show off some of them that they did, and, like, that's cool. That's a really good thing to do with, like, an art medium. And I'm sure if you're familiar with the work, there's tons of them thrown in there. The background had quite a bit of care put into it, like, it really does draw you into some of the scenery. And clearly someone cared to have, like, a quote-unquote, a word-for-word retelling, and I'm sure someone would appreciate that. Like, honestly, if you were to find this, like, give the back of it a read. It's, like, really fun to hear about the artists being so passionate about their work. You can really feel it in their words, how excited they were, like, working on and adapting this. Was it my cup of tea? No, absolutely not. I think it was awful. But did it achieve what I think the crew wanted? Oh yeah, and I'm glad they're proud of their work. I'm glad this work got a group of people who were ecstatic to work on it and create it, and I do hope it found its audience. To be honest, I had a lot more of a cynical ending note before I read the author's notes at the back. I just kept coming back to the question of, who was this made for? Not for me. And you know what? That's okay. See you next time on Introverted Manga Reviews. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you had any interesting takes. If you enjoyed, all three of those things are free and they help me in the algorithm. I'd really like to make this a job if I can. Bye bye.